The metallic screech of train wheels against frozen steel cuts through the winter air like a scream. Snow falls in thick curtains across the elevated platform of the Chicago Transit Authority's Red Line station, blurring the edges of the world into white silence. But beneath that silence, something stirs. Captain Jake Mercer stands at the edge of the platform, his breath forming clouds in the December cold. His turnout coat is dusted with frost, his gloves stiff from the chill. Beside him, his rescue dog, a Belgian Malinois named Hope, plants her paws firmly on the icy concrete, ears pinned forward, body rigid with alert intensity. Hope doesn't bark. She doesn't whine. She simply stares down into the dark space between the platform and the tracks below, her nose twitching, her eyes locked on something no one else can see. Jake follows her gaze. The gap is narrow, shadowed, a place where light barely reaches even in daytime. Now, at dusk, it's a black void. Hope, what is it? The dog shifts her weight, steps closer to the edge. Her breath comes faster now, visible in the cold. She glances back at Jake, just once, and in that look is something unmistakable, urgency. But what she uncovered wasn't a threat, it was a warning. Chicago in December is a city wrapped in iron and ice. The skyline rises like jagged teeth against a bruised sky, and the wind off Lake Michigan cuts through layers of wool and leather as if they're paper. The streets hum with the rhythm of commuters, holiday shoppers, and the ever-present wail of sirens. For Captain Jake Mercer, winter is the busiest season. Fires ignite faster in the cold, space heaters overload, candles tip over, old wiring sparks under the strain of electric blankets and heated floors. Rescues multiply. The city never stops needing him. Jake is a 10-year veteran of the Chicago Fire Department, stationed at Engine 18 on the south side. He's built like someone who spent a decade pulling people from wreckage. Broad shoulders, calloused hands, eyes that have seen too much but still soften when he talks about his daughter, Emma, who's 7 and loves drawing pictures of fire trucks. But Jake's most trusted partner isn't human, it's Hope. Hope came into his life 3 years ago, a young Malinois with a damaged leg and a history no one could fully trace. She'd been found abandoned near a rail yard, malnourished and limping, with a scar across her left shoulder that suggested she'd been hurt badly and left behind. The fire department's K-9 unit took her in, thinking she might wash out of training. But Hope surprised everyone. She didn't just heal, she excelled. Hope became one of the best search and rescue dogs in the department, fast, intuitive, fearless. She could find people trapped in collapsed buildings, detect accelerants at arson scenes, and sense danger before it became visible. And she bonded with Jake in a way that felt less like training and more like partnership. Where Jake went, Hope followed. Where Hope led, Jake trusted. Tonight they were finishing a long shift. The call had come in 20 minutes ago. A reported smell of smoke near the Fullerton Red Line station. Not a fire, the dispatcher said. Just a concern. Probably nothing. But in winter, probably nothing can turn into something fast. Jake and Hope arrived to find the platform nearly empty. A few commuters huddled near the shelter, stamping their feet, scrolling their phones. The station manager, a thin man in a CTA jacket, waved Jake over. "Sorry to call you out for this," he said, his voice tight with cold. "We got a report of smoke smell down near the tracks. I checked it out myself, didn't see anything. But protocol, you know." Jake nodded. Better safe than sorry. He walked the length of the platform, scanning the tracks below, checking vents and electrical boxes. Everything looked normal. The snow kept falling, soft and relentless, blanketing the world in white. Hope trotted beside him, her movements precise, her focus sharp. She sniffed the air, tested the ground, moved with purpose. And then, halfway down the platform, she stopped. Jake stopped too. Hope's ears swiveled forward. Her body went still. She stared down into the narrow gap between the platform and the tracks, a space maybe 18 inches wide, dark and inaccessible, where debris and trash sometimes collected. Hope? The dog didn't move. Her breathing quickened. She took one step closer to the edge, then another. Jake crouched beside her, following her line of sight. He saw nothing but shadow. The wind carried the faint smell of metal and oil, the usual scent of the rails. No smoke, no fire, nothing. But Hope wasn't moving. "Talk to me, girl," Jake murmured. "What do you smell?" Hope turned her head, looked directly at him and whined, a low, urgent sound that Jake had learned to recognize. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was certainty. Something was down there. Jake pulled out his flashlight and aimed it into the gap. The beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating rusted metal, frozen puddles, and scraps of paper pressed flat by wind. Nothing unusual, nothing alive. But Hope kept staring. Hope, sit. She didn't sit. She paced along the edge, nose low, tail stiff. Her paws scraped against the concrete. She glanced back at Jake again, more insistent this time. The station manager approached, arms crossed. "Everything okay?" "Not sure yet," Jake said. He knelt lower, angling the flashlight deeper into the gap. The beam flickered across ice and metal, shadows shifting with the movement. And then, there, a flash of color. Something pale, almost flesh-toned, pressed against the underside of the platform. Jake's pulse quickened. Hold on. He adjusted the angle of the light, narrowing the beam. The color resolved into shape. A small hand, fingers curled, skin pale as snow. "Jesus," Jake breathed. Hope barked, sharp, loud, demanding. The station manager stepped closer. "What is it?" "Someone's down there." The words hung in the cold air for a moment. Impossible and undeniable. Jake's mind raced. How could someone be down there? The gap was too narrow for an adult to fit through. A child maybe, but why? How? He swept the light further along the gap, tracing the edge of the platform. And then he saw it. Another hand, smaller, identical. Two hands, two children. "Call it in," Jake snapped at the station manager. "Two victims, trapped beneath the platform. We need a full response. Medics, extrication team, now." The manager fumbled for his radio, voice shaking as he relayed the information. Jake was already moving. He dropped to his stomach, pressing himself as close to the edge as he could, shining the light deeper. The beam revealed more now. Two small bodies, pressed together, wedged in the narrow space beneath the platform. They weren't moving. "Hey!" Jake called down. "Can you hear me? I'm a firefighter. We're going to get you out." No response. The bodies were still. Hope circled beside him, pacing, whining. Her distress was palpable. Jake's training kicked in. Stay calm. Assess the situation. Don't make it worse. He reached for his radio. "Engine 18 to dispatch. We have a confirmed rescue situation at Fullerton Red Line. 2 juveniles trapped beneath the platform, non-responsive. We need full extrication and medical response. Priority 1. The radio crackled. "Copy that, Engine 18. Units en route. ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Jake's stomach tightened. In this cold, 8 minutes could be too long. He looked down into the gap again. The children, girls he could see now, maybe 6 or 7 years old, were wearing thin jackets, no hats, no gloves. Their skin was pale, their lips tinged with blue. Frost clung to their hair. Hypothermia, maybe worse. Jake stood, scanning the platform. "I need a way down there. Is there access from below?" The station manager shook his head. "The maintenance hatch is 2 platforms down. You'd have to—" "No time." Jake turned to Hope. "Stay." He lowered himself over the edge of the platform, gripping the concrete lip, and dropped down onto the tracks. The landing jarred his knees, but he stayed upright. The cold hit him immediately, sharper here, unfiltered by the platform above. The wind funneled through the tunnel, carrying the metallic tang of the rails. Jake activated his flashlight again and moved toward the gap beneath the platform. Up close, the space looked even narrower. He crouched, angling the light inside. The girls were curled together, tucked into the crawl space like animals seeking shelter. Their eyes were closed. Their breathing, if they were breathing, was impossible to see from this angle. "Hey," Jake called softly. "I'm here to help. Can you hear me?" No response. He reached out, trying to touch the nearest girl's hand. His fingers brushed her skin. It was cold. Too cold. Jake pulled back, his mind racing. He couldn't pull them out from this angle. The space was too tight, the platform too low. He'd need tools, leverage, time. Time they didn't have. Above him, Hope barked again, sharper now. Jake looked up and saw her pacing along the edge, staring down at him. Her eyes were wide, frantic. "I know, girl," Jake said quietly. "I know." The wind howled through the tunnel, carrying with it the distant rumble of an approaching train. Jake's heart seized. The tracks were supposed to be shut down. Dispatch had confirmed it, but the sound was unmistakable. Steel wheels on steel rails growing louder. "Dispatch, this is Mercer. I need confirmation that all trains are stopped on this line." Static. Then a voice, rushed and panicked. "Engine 18, we have a situation. A southbound Red Line train departed from Belmont before we could halt it. ETA to your location, 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Jake looked at the girls, then at the tunnel stretching into darkness. The train's headlight appeared in the distance, a single white eye piercing the gloom. "Get off the tracks!" someone shouted from above. But Jake didn't move. He couldn't. The girls were still wedged beneath the platform, unreachable from above, vulnerable from below. If he left them, the vibration from the train, even if it stopped in time, could cause the already precarious platform edge to shift, to collapse. He had to stay. Jake positioned himself between the tracks and the crawl space, his body a shield. He pressed his back against the concrete, waving his flashlight toward the approaching train, the beam cutting through the snow. "Stop! Stop!" he shouted, knowing the engineer couldn't hear him, knowing it was futile. The train's horn blared, a deafening sound that shook the air. The headlight grew brighter, closer. Jake could feel the vibration in his bones now, the rumble of tons of steel bearing down. 50 feet, 40, 30. The brakes screamed. Sparks erupted from the wheels as metal ground against metal. The train was slowing, but not fast enough. 20 feet, 10. Jake closed his eyes, and then the world stopped. The train halted 3 feet from where Jake stood, its massive bulk trembling, its brakes hissing steam into the frozen air. The headlight illuminated him fully now, casting his shadow long and dark across the tracks. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the sound of footsteps, frantic running. Firefighters and paramedics flooded onto the tracks surrounding Jake, pulling him back, checking him for injuries. "I'm fine," Jake said, his voice hoarse. "The girls, get the girls." The sirens arrived in waves. First the ambulance, then the ladder truck, then 2 more engines. Red and blue lights painted the snow in violent color, and the platform filled with firefighters, paramedics, and police officers, all shouting over the wind and the wail of the trains that had been halted on both sides of the station. Jake climbed back onto the platform breathless, his gloves slick with frost. Lieutenant Ramirez, his commanding officer, met him at the edge. Status? 2 girls, approximately 6 to 8 years old, trapped beneath the platform in a crawl space. Non-responsive, possible hypothermia, maybe worse. We need extrication tools and a medic on standby. Ramirez nodded, already calling orders into his radio. "Get the jaws of life down here. I want a medic team on the tracks, ready to move the second we pull them out." Jake watched as his crew assembled, moving with practiced efficiency. The jaws, a hydraulic rescue tool capable of cutting through metal and concrete, was lowered onto the tracks. 2 paramedics followed, carrying backboards and thermal blankets. Hope stayed close to Jake, her body pressed against his leg. She hadn't stopped watching the gap. "She found them," Jake said quietly to Ramirez. "I don't know how, but she knew they were down there." Ramirez glanced at the dog, then back at Jake. "Good dog." The extrication began. 2 firefighters positioned the jaws at the edge of the platform, targeting the concrete lip that blocked access to the crawl space. The hydraulic motor roared to life, a deep grinding sound that drowned out the wind. Metal bit into concrete. Dust and fragments rained down onto the tracks. Jake stood at the edge, flashlight in hand, watching as the space widened inch by inch. The girls didn't move. They didn't react to the noise, the vibration, the voices calling down to them. "Come on," Jake muttered under his breath. "Come on." The concrete cracked. The jaws pulled back, and a section of the platform lip broke away, clattering onto the tracks. The gap was wider now, wide enough for a person to reach through. "Medic!" Ramirez called. One of the paramedics, a woman named Torres, sharp-eyed and steady, dropped onto the tracks and moved into position. She knelt beside the crawl space, reaching inside with gloved hands. "I've got a pulse on the first one," she called up. "Weak, but there. Body temp is way down. We need to move fast." Jake felt his chest loosen slightly. Alive. At least one of them was alive. Torres worked quickly, sliding a thermal blanket under the first girl and gently pulling her free from the crawl space. The girl's body was limp, her face pale and expressionless. Torres cradled her carefully, lifting her onto a backboard that another paramedic had positioned on the tracks. "Second one," Torres said, reaching back into the crawl space. The second girl came out the same way. Small, cold, unresponsive. Torres checked her pulse, her breathing, her expression tightened. "Pulse is thready, respiration shallow. We need to warm her now." The paramedics moved in tandem, wrapping both girls in thermal blankets and securing them to the backboards. Within seconds, they were being lifted onto the platform, carried toward the waiting ambulance. Jake followed, Hope at his heels. He watched as the medics loaded the girls into the ambulance, hooking them up to monitors, administering oxygen, starting IVs. The doors closed with a heavy thud, and the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing. The platform fell quiet again. The firefighters began packing up equipment, securing the scene. Police officers cordoned off the area with yellow tape, taking photographs, asking questions. Ramirez approached Jake, his face grim. "Good work. Without your dog, we wouldn't have found them in time." Jake nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He stared at the gap beneath the platform, now exposed and empty. "How did they get down there?" Ramirez shook his head. "That's what the cops are trying to figure out." A detective, a tall man in a dark coat, badge clipped to his belt, stepped forward. "Captain Mercer? I'm Detective Cole. I need to ask you a few questions." Jake turned to face him. "Go ahead. Did you see anyone else on the platform when you arrived? Anyone acting suspicious?" "No. The platform was almost empty. Just a few commuters waiting for the train." "And the girls, did they say anything? Make any noise?" "They were unconscious when we found them. I don't know how long they'd been down there." Cole nodded, jotting notes in a small pad. "We're pulling security footage now. Hopefully we'll get a better picture of what happened." Jake glanced down at Hope. The dog sat calmly now, her work done, her eyes still fixed on the gap. "She's the one who found them," Jake said. "I don't know how she knew, but she did." Cole looked at Hope, then back at Jake. "Lucky she was here." "Yeah," Jake said quietly. "Lucky." The rest of the night passed in a blur of reports, interviews, and paperwork. Jake returned to the firehouse just after midnight, exhausted and cold. He fed Hope, filled her water bowl, and sat down in the common room with a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm hours ago. His phone buzzed. A text from Ramirez. "Girls are stable. Still at Northwestern. Cops want to talk to you tomorrow." Jake set the phone down and stared at the wall. Stable. That was good. But stable wasn't the same as okay. He thought about the girls. How small they'd looked. How cold. How impossibly vulnerable. How had they ended up beneath that platform? Had they crawled there themselves? Had someone put them there? The questions gnawed at him. Hope padded over and rested her head on his knee. Jake scratched behind her ears, feeling the warmth of her fur, the steady rhythm of her breathing. "You did good, girl," he murmured. "Real good." Hope's tail thumped once against the floor. Jake's mind drifted back to the moment he'd seen those small hands in the flashlight beam, the moment he'd realized that 2 lives hung in the balance, the moment Hope had refused to move, refused to give up, refused to let him walk away. Dogs like Hope were rare. Most K9s were good at their jobs, some were great, but Hope was something else entirely. She had an instinct that went beyond training, beyond conditioning. She could sense things before they became visible. She could feel danger, distress, need. Jake had seen it before. The time she'd alerted to a gas leak in an apartment building minutes before an explosion. The time she'd found a missing child buried under rubble when every other searcher had given up. The time she'd pulled Jake himself back from the edge of a collapsing floor, her teeth sunk into his coat, her body weight leveraged against his momentum. Hope saved lives. That was what she did. That was who she was. And tonight, she'd done it again. Jake's phone buzzed once more. This time it was a number he didn't recognize. He answered. "Captain Mercer, speaking. This is Dr. Lisa Chen from Northwestern Memorial. I'm one of the physicians treating the Martin twins." Jake sat up straighter. "Are they okay?" "They're stable for now, but I wanted to give you a heads up. We've found some concerning injuries, old fractures, burn marks, bruising in patterns consistent with repeated trauma." Jake's jaw tightened. "Abuse." "We believe so. The police have been notified. Child Protective Services is involved, but I thought you should know, given that you were the one who found them. Thank you for telling me. There's one more thing." Dr. Chen's voice softened. "When the girls first arrived, before we sedated them for treatment, one of them, Lily, I think, kept asking for the dog. She said the dog had stayed with them, that the dog had kept them warm." Jake frowned. "Hope was on the platform the whole time. She couldn't have been down there with them." "I know, but that's what the girl said. She was very insistent." Jake didn't know what to make of that. Maybe Lily had been delirious. Maybe she'd dreamed it. Or maybe in the confusion and terror of those hours in the dark, she'd imagined a presence that brought her comfort. "I'll come by tomorrow," Jake said. "I'd like to see them, if that's allowed." "I think they'd like that too." The next morning, Jake drove to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The sky was low and gray, heavy with the promise of more snow. The city moved around him in sluggish waves, traffic, pedestrians, the hum of a world that never quite stopped. He found Detective Cole in the waiting area outside the pediatric intensive care unit. Cole stood when he saw Jake, extending a hand. Thanks for coming. I wanted to update you. How are they? Jake asked. Alive. That's the main thing. Both girls are being treated for severe hypothermia and dehydration. Doctors say they were down there for at least 6 to 8 hours, maybe longer. Jake's stomach turned. 6 to 8 hours in that cold, in that dark, cramped space. Do we know who they are? Cole pulled out his notepad. Their names are Lily and Rose Martin, twins age 7. They were reported missing yesterday afternoon by their mother, Karen Martin. She said they went out to play in the park near their apartment and never came home. The park's nowhere near the Fullerton station, Jake said. No, it's not. That's what we're trying to figure out. Cole flipped a page. We pulled security footage from the station. The girls appear on camera around 3 p.m. They're alone walking along the platform. They look confused, scared maybe. Then they disappear off camera, and we don't see them again until your team pulled them out. Someone must have seen them, Jake said. It was the middle of the afternoon. You'd think. But no one reported anything. The station manager didn't notice them. Commuters didn't notice them. It's like they were invisible. Jake frowned. What about the mother? Does she know why they were there? Cole's expression darkened. That's where it gets complicated. Karen Martin is not in great shape. She's a single mum, works 2 jobs, barely making ends meet. She's got a history, substance abuse, child services involvement. According to her, the girls have been acting strange for the past few weeks. Withdrawn, scared. She thought it was just stress from school. Did she hurt them? Jake asked, his voice tightening. We don't know yet. She denies it, says she loves them, that she'd never do anything to harm them. But the girls had bruises, old ones, not from the fall or the cold, and their medical records show they've been to the ER twice in the past year for suspicious injuries. Jake felt a cold weight settle in his chest. So someone was hurting them. Maybe. Or maybe they were hurting themselves. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Cole closed the notepad. The girls haven't woken up yet. Until they do, we're working blind. Can I see them? Cole hesitated. Why? Because Hope found them. Because... Jake trailed off, searching for the right words. Because I need to know they're okay. Cole studied him for a moment, then nodded. Come on. The pediatric ICU was quiet. The kind of quiet that felt heavy. Oppressive. Jake followed Cole through double doors and down a hallway lined with glass-walled rooms. In one of them, 2 small beds sat side by side, surrounded by monitors and IV poles. Lily and Rose Martin lay motionless, tucked beneath white blankets, their faces pale and delicate. They looked identical. Same dark hair, same small noses, same thin arms. Tubes ran from their noses to oxygen tanks. Wires connected their chests to heart monitors that beeped in steady rhythm. Jake stopped at the doorway, unable to move closer. He'd pulled people from burning buildings, from car wrecks, from collapsing structures. He'd seen death and come close to it himself, but something about these 2 girls, so small, so fragile, hit him harder than anything else. They're fighters, a voice said behind him. Jake turned. A nurse, middle-aged, with kind eyes, stood at his shoulder. I'm Sarah, she said. I've been with them since they came in. They're stable now. Body temps are coming up. Vitals are improving. They're strong. When will they wake up? Hard to say. Could be hours, could be days. Their bodies went through a lot. Jake nodded slowly. Did they say anything? Before they lost consciousness? Sarah shook her head. Not a word. But... She hesitated. What? When they first came in, before we sedated them, they were holding hands, gripping each other so tight we couldn't separate them, like they were afraid to let go. Jake looked back at the girls. Even now, unconscious and medicated, their hands were touching beneath the blankets. They've been through something, Sarah said quietly. Something bad. You can see it in their eyes, even when they're closed. Jake didn't know what to say. He stood there for a long moment, watching the rise and fall of their chests, the steady beep of the monitors, the soft hiss of the oxygen. Finally, he turned to Cole. Find out what happened to them, whatever it takes. Cole nodded. We will. Over the next 2 days, the investigation unfolded in fragments. Detective Cole and his team interviewed neighbors, teachers, relatives, anyone who might shed light on how Lily and Rose ended up beneath that platform. The picture that emerged was complicated and heartbreaking. Karen Martin, their mother, was a woman drowning in circumstances beyond her control. She worked as a cashier at a grocery store during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. She rarely slept. She had no family nearby, no support system. She loved her daughters, everyone agreed on that, but love wasn't always enough. The girls attended a public school on the south side, where they were quiet, well-behaved, and almost invisible. Their teachers described them as sweet but withdrawn, the kind of children who never asked for help, who never caused trouble, who faded into the background. But there were signs, bruises on their arms, a limp one day, a bandaged hand the next. When asked, the girls said they'd fallen, or bumped into something or hurt themselves playing. No one pressed further. Child Protective Services had been called twice. Both times they'd conducted home visits, interviewed Karen, checked the apartment. Both times they'd found no evidence of abuse. The bruises were explained. The apartment was clean. Karen was cooperative. The case was closed. But the bruises kept appearing. Detective Cole followed the thread deeper. He interviewed the girl's pediatrician, who confirmed the pattern. He spoke to neighbors who said they sometimes heard crying from the apartment, soft, muffled sounds that could have been anything. He pulled phone records, bank statements, social media, and then he found something. Karen Martin had a boyfriend. His name was Derek Lowe, a man in his mid-30s with a record: assault, domestic violence, drug possession. He'd been in and out of jail for years. He'd moved into Karen's apartment 6 months ago. The neighbors had seen him, a tall man with a hard face and harder eyes. He came and went at odd hours. He shouted sometimes, his voice carrying through thin walls. He made the girls nervous. One neighbor recalled seeing Lily and Rose sitting on the front steps, waiting for their mother to come home, while Derek's shadow moved behind the curtains of their apartment window. Cole dug deeper. He pulled Derek's employment records, sporadic at best. He looked at his finances, gambling debts, payday loans, a trail of unpaid bills. He reviewed his social media, angry posts, conspiracy theories, photos of Derek with a beer in one hand and a raised middle finger in the other. And then Cole found the restraining order. 3 years ago, Derek's ex-girlfriend had filed for protection, claiming he'd threatened her, choked her, locked her in a closet for hours. The order had been granted. Derek had served 6 months for violation. Cole brought the file to his captain. "This is our guy." But proving it was another matter. Derek had been careful. He'd left no witnesses, no digital trail, no confessions. And until the girls woke up, there was no testimony. Cole decided to bring Karen in again. Karen Martin sat in the interview room, her hands shaking, her eyes red from crying. She looked older than her 32 years, tired, worn down, defeated. Cole sat across from her, his voice calm but firm. "Karen, I need you to be honest with me. Did Derek hurt your daughters?" Karen stared at the table. "I don't know." "You don't know? Or you don't want to know?" Her voice cracked. "I was never there. I was always working. Derek said he'd watch them while I was gone. He said he'd take care of them. And you believed him?" "I had to. I couldn't afford a babysitter. I couldn't quit my jobs. I thought..." She trailed off, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought he cared about them. Did you ever see him hurt them?" "No, but..." She paused. "But sometimes when I came home they'd be different, quiet, scared. And Derek would say they'd been bad, that he'd had to discipline them. Discipline them how? I don't know. He wouldn't tell me. And the girls wouldn't tell me either. They just shut down." Cole leaned forward. "Karen, your daughters were found beneath a train platform, freezing to death. Someone put them there. Someone left them there. If you know anything at all, you need to tell me now." Karen broke. The sobs came hard and fast, shaking her entire body. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I thought Derek was helping me. I thought he was making things easier. But he was hurting them. And I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it." Cole let her cry. When she finally composed herself, he slid a photograph across the table. It was a still image from the security footage. Derek standing at the edge of the train platform, watching the girls as they crawled into the gap. "This was taken yesterday afternoon," Cole said. "That's Derek. He followed the girls to the station. He watched them hide, and then he walked away." Karen stared at the photo, her face pale. "Oh my God, where is he now?" "I don't know. He left last night. Said he had to go out. He never came back." Cole stood. "If he contacts you, you call me immediately, understand?" Karen nodded, her body trembling. The manhunt for Derek Lowe began immediately. Police issued an APB, circulated his photo, staked out known associates. But Derek had gone to ground. He wasn't at his usual haunts. The bars, the betting shops, the apartments of friends who owed him favors. He wasn't using his credit cards. His phone was off. He'd vanished. Cole coordinated with patrol units across the city. He checked bus stations, train terminals, homeless shelters. He interviewed Derek's ex-girlfriend, who said she hadn't heard from him in years and hoped never to again. Days passed. The trail went cold. And then, On the fourth day, a tip came in. A bartender on the west side recognized Derek from the news. Said he'd been in the night before, drinking heavily, muttering to himself. The bartender had overheard something about a cabin, a place up north. Cole ran Derek's records again, and there it was, a property deed from 15 years ago before Derek's first arrest. A hunting cabin in rural Wisconsin, inherited from his grandfather. Cole assembled a team. They drove north through snow and pine forests, following back roads that hadn't been plowed in days. The cabin sat at the end of a long gravel drive, surrounded by trees, isolated and dark. They approached carefully, weapons drawn. Cole knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again. "Derek Lowe, Chicago Police, open the door." Silence. Cole nodded to the officer beside him. The door was kicked in. Inside, the cabin was cold and empty. No furniture, no food, just empty beer cans and a sleeping bag in the corner. And Derek, sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, a bottle in his hand. He looked up as the officers entered, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. He didn't resist. He didn't run. He just stared. "It's over, Derek," Cole said. "Stand up." Derek laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Yeah, it's over." They cuffed him and led him outside. On the third day, Lily and Rose Martin opened their eyes. It happened early in the morning, before the sun had fully risen. Sarah, the nurse, was checking their vitals when she noticed Lily's fingers twitching. Then her eyes fluttered open, dark, wide, confused. "Hey, sweetie," Sarah said softly, leaning closer. "You're okay. You're in the hospital. You're safe." Lily blinked, her gaze unfocused. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Sarah squeezed her hand. "Can you hear me?" Lily nodded, just barely. "Good. That's good. Your sister's right here, see? She's okay too." Lily turned her head slowly and looked at the bed beside her. Rose was still asleep, but her chest rose and fell steadily, and her monitors beeped in reassuring rhythm. Lily's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, her small hand stretching toward her sister. Sarah helped her, guiding Lily's fingers to Rose's hand. The moment they touched, Lily's body relaxed and the tears spilled over. "It's okay," Sarah murmured. "You're both okay now." An hour later, Rose woke too. The process was slower, more tentative, but when she saw Lily awake beside her, her expression softened, and she whispered a single word, "Sissy." Lily squeezed her hand. "I'm here." Detective Cole arrived at the hospital within the hour. He brought Dr. Ellen Park with him, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma cases. Together they sat with the girls in a private room, far from the noise and bustle of the ICU. The girls sat side by side on a single bed, their hands clasped, their eyes wary. "Hi, Lily." "Hi, Rose," Dr. Park said gently. "My name is Ellen. I'm here to help you. You're safe now, okay? No one is going to hurt you." The girls didn't respond. Cole leaned forward, his voice soft. "We just want to understand what happened. Can you tell us how you ended up beneath the train platform?" Lily glanced at Rose. Rose looked down at her lap. "It's okay," Dr. Park said. "Take your time." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, Lily said, "We were hiding." "Hiding from what?" Cole asked. Lily's grip on Rose's hand tightened. "From him." "Who's him?" "Derek." The name hung in the air, heavy and damning. Dr. Park exchanged a glance with Cole, then turned back to the girls. "Did Derek hurt you?" Lily nodded. Rose nodded. "What did he do?" Lily's voice cracked. "He hit us. He said if we told Mommy he'd hurt her too, so we didn't tell." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "We tried to be good. We tried to be quiet. But he was always angry." "So you ran away," Dr. Park said gently. "We didn't mean to," Lily said. "We just wanted to hide. We saw the train station and thought maybe we could hide there until he left." "And you crawled beneath the platform?" Rose nodded. "It was dark and small. We thought he wouldn't find us there." Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "We were so cold. We called for help, but no one heard us." Dr. Park's eyes glistened. "But someone did hear you. A firefighter and his dog. They found you." Lily looked up. The dog was brown, with pointy ears. "That's Hope," Cole said. "She's a rescue dog." Lily's expression softened. "She stayed with us. In the dark. She kept us warm." Cole frowned. "Hope was on the platform the whole time. She couldn't have been down there with you." But Lily was insistent. "She was. I felt her. She licked my hand." Rose nodded. "I heard her breathing." Dr. Park and Cole exchanged a glance. Neither of them knew what to make of it, but they didn't press. What mattered was that the girls were safe. The rest could wait. The interrogation of Derek Lowe took place in a small room with grey walls and a single table. Derek sat across from Detective Cole, his wrists cuffed, his face expressionless. Cole laid out the evidence methodically: the security footage, the testimony from Karen, the medical records showing years of abuse, the statement from the bartender, the cabin in Wisconsin. Derek listened in silence. Finally, Cole leaned back in his chair. "You left those girls to die." Derek's jaw tightened. "I didn't mean for them to stay there that long." "Then what did you mean?" "I just wanted to scare them. Teach them a lesson. They were always whining, always causing problems. I thought if they spent a few hours in the cold, they'd learn to shut up." Cole's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. "They were 7 years old. They were brats. They were children, and you left them to freeze to death." Derek looked away. "I came back. I was going to get them out. But there were cops everywhere. Firefighters. I couldn't get close. So you ran." "Yeah, I ran." Cole slid a photograph across the table. It showed Lily and Rose in their hospital beds, pale and fragile, hooked up to machines. "Look at them," Cole said. "Look at what you did." Derek glanced at the photo, then away. "I didn't think they'd actually get hurt." "You didn't think, that's the problem." Cole stood. "Derek Lowe, you're being charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of child endangerment, multiple counts of assault and domestic violence. You're done." Derek didn't respond. As Cole left the room, he felt a cold satisfaction. Justice wasn't always swift, but it was coming. Karen Martin was not charged. The district attorney determined that while she had failed to protect her daughters, she had not knowingly allowed Derek to harm them. She entered a court-mandated rehabilitation program and began therapy. The girls were placed temporarily with a foster family while Karen worked to rebuild her life. The foster home was run by Linda Schaefer, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and a gentle smile. She'd fostered dozens of children over the years, kids from broken homes, abusive situations, impossible circumstances. She knew trauma, she knew healing, and she knew that Lily and Rose needed time, patience, and love. The girls arrived on a cold afternoon, their belongings packed in 2 small backpacks. They held hands as they walked through the front door, their eyes wide and cautious. Linda knelt down to their level. "Hi girls, I'm Linda. This is your new home, at least for a little while. You're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." Lily glanced at Rose. Rose glanced back. "Are you sure?" Lily whispered. "I'm sure," Linda said. Over the next few weeks, the girls began to heal, slowly, carefully. They attended therapy sessions with Dr. Park. They started school again, in a new district, where no one knew their story. They made friends, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, and they asked about hope. Every session with Dr. Park, every conversation with Linda, they brought up the dog who had found them, the dog who had stayed with them, the dog who had kept them warm. Dr. Park didn't know how to explain it, neither did Linda, but they didn't dismiss it either. Sometimes, in moments of profound trauma, the mind creates what it needs to survive. Maybe hope had been real. Maybe she'd been imagined. Either way, she'd saved them. Jake Mercer visited the girls at their foster home a week after they were released from the hospital. He brought hope with him. The foster home was a small, warm house on the north side, with a yard and a swing set and a golden retriever that barked excitedly when Hope arrived. The foster mother, Linda, welcomed Jake with a smile. "The girls have been asking about you," she said, "and about your dog." Jake followed her inside. Lily and Rose were sitting on the living room floor coloring. When they saw Hope, their faces lit up. "Doggy!" Rose cried, scrambling to her feet. Hope trotted over, tail wagging, and the girls threw their arms around her. Hope stood patiently, letting them pet her, her eyes soft and calm. "She found us," Lily said, looking up at Jake. "Didn't she?" Jake crouched down beside them. "Yeah, she did. She's pretty special." "Can we keep her?" Rose asked, her eyes wide. Jake smiled. "She's got a job to do, but I bet she'd love to visit you guys again." The girls hugged Hope tighter. Jake stayed for an hour, watching them play, listening to them laugh. They were still fragile, still healing, but there was light in their eyes now, hope in their voices. As he left, Linda walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. Those girls wouldn't be here without you." Jake shook his head. "It wasn't me. It was Hope." Linda smiled. "Then thank Hope for me." Jake looked down at his dog, who sat calmly at his side, her eyes bright and alert. He scratched behind her ears. "Good girl," he murmured. "Real good girl." Winter in Chicago softened into spring. The snow melted, the lake thawed, the city woke from its frozen sleep, and life resumed its relentless forward march. Jake Mercer returned to his shifts at Engine 18, pulling people from fires, answering calls, saving lives. Hope stayed by his side as she always had, her nose sharp, her instincts sharper. Lily and Rose Martin healed slowly. They returned to school, made new friends, learned to trust again. Karen completed her program and was granted supervised visitation. She cried when she saw them, held them tight, whispered apologies they were too young to fully understand, but accepted anyway. Derek Lowe was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. He never apologized. He never showed remorse. And as the judge read his sentence, he stared at the floor, his face blank, his future empty. But the girls didn't need his apology. They had each other. They had Linda. They had therapy and support and a chance at a real childhood. They had safety, and they had the memory of a dog who refused to give up. A dog who found them in the dark. A dog who, whether real or imagined, gave them the strength to hold on. On a warm evening in April, Jake brought Hope back to visit. The girls were playing in the backyard, laughing as they chased Linda's golden retriever around the grass. When they saw Hope, they ran over, their faces bright with joy. "Hope!" Lily cried. The dog's tail wagged furiously as the girls wrapped their arms around her. They buried their faces in her fur, and for a moment everything was perfect. Jake watched from the porch, a smile tugging at his lips. Hope had saved more lives than he could count, but these two, Lily and Rose, they were special. They reminded him why he did this job, why Hope did this job, because sometimes in the darkest moments when all seems lost, hope arrives, not as an abstract concept, but as something tangible, something real. Sometimes hope has four paws, a sharp nose, and a heart that refuses to quit. Sometimes hope finds you when no one else can, and when it does, it changes everything. Months later, on a cold December evening exactly 1 year after the rescue, Jake received a package in the mail. Inside was a drawing carefully folded, with a note written in a child's handwriting. "Dear Captain Jake and Hope, thank you for saving us. We love you. Love, Lily and Rose." The drawing showed two small girls standing on a train platform holding hands. Beside them stood a firefighter and a brown dog with pointy ears. Above them, in colorful letters, were the words, "Hope One Big Jake," taped the drawing to the wall of the firehouse, right above Hope's water bowl. And every time he looked at it, he was reminded that in a city full of darkness and cold, sometimes the smallest light can change the world. Sometimes, all it takes is hope.